Hello everyone, so glad you can join me today. I'll be showing you how I made these lovely wine koozies. At least I think they're lovely. What makes them even more attractive is the cost. Almost everything I used for this project came from the dollar store or around my home. I'm hoping that you will give them a try. Let's get started. My DIY today starts with these two. First, I created the silhouettes using a foam board, which has its drawbacks. A silhouette cutter seems to be a great option to do this, but if you're like me and just using what you have on hand, you will need wax paper, cardstock or foam board, an X-Acto knife or a pair of scissors, and a pencil. Right off the bat, I have to say it, I'm not a very good artist. I literally put wax paper over my computer screen and traced an image off the internet. Hopefully I didn't do any damage to my screen. Figure 1 shows the outline I ended up with after modifying it a bit. You have to be careful of copyright infringements. I discovered even a drawing of a woman's hand was copyrighted. Yep, copyrighted, not copywritten. Okay, back to my silhouettes. Tape the wax paper tracing onto the cardstock or foam board, whichever you choose to use, as shown in figures 1 and 2. Outline the images with your pencil, pressing hard enough to create an impression on the other side. So figures 1 and 2 show what the impressions should look like depending on the material you chose. As you can see, figure 2 or the cardstock impression came out very light, so you should go over it again with a pencil before cutting it out. I used a foam board, which I probably won't use if I were doing this again. I was unable to get smooth edges and cutting the faces were a huge challenge. I failed. Perhaps sharper tools would have helped. Figure 3 shows where I cut along the edges of the silhouette. I used an X-Acto knife because of the thickness of the foam board. A pair of scissors should be enough for cardstock. Now I have my silhouettes, but I wanted to zero in on the heads for a bit. You can see in the top right photo how her facial outline looks shapely, but his looks kind of, let's say, strange. I read somewhere that a lot of borrowing happens in the creative world, so that's what I did. Figure 1 shows the face I ended up with after cutting out the silhouette from the foam board. As I said before, I couldn't get it just quite right. Figure 2 shows the final product. I printed the faces and I cut as carefully as I could in order to maintain a shape. Again, I did some modifications. It was easier because the paper was much thinner. Then I glued the heads onto the silhouettes. I did that for both of them. Of course, if your drawing skills are better than mine or you just want to try out your skills, go right ahead and draw your silhouettes. I made just a simple skirt and top for the female silhouette. For the skirt, I used a gift bag that I received at Christmas and some lace I had bought at the dollar store a while back. I didn't like it at the time, but it came in handy now. You will also need a glue gun, some straight pins, a pair of scissors, needle and thread or fabric glue, Cut enough lace that will make some pleats to go around the silhouette. I averaged the amount of fabric I would need, but you can put the fabric around the silhouette to find out how much you will need. Next, you want to make little pleats and pin the fabric as you go. Hopefully this short clip will guide you. This part is fun for me. As a child, I always loved to sew dolls' clothes. After pinning, I stitched a straight line just above the pins. You should get a straight-ish stitch like the one in figure 2. I suppose you can use fabric glue to keep the pleats in place. I really haven't tried it, so I'm not sure how it will work. Cut off excess fabric above the stitch line as shown in figure 3. Because the lace is so see-through, I decided to make a lining for the skirt. I cut a small piece of the gift bag paper in the shape of a skirt, and I also cut a narrow strip of paper about 1/4 of an inch in width and long enough to go around the silhouette at the waist. This will be the waistband. I glued the stitched lace piece over the paper lining, and then I glued the band of the skirt over the stitched line. And there you have it, a beautiful skirt for your silhouette. The top was much easier to make than the skirt. I simply traced an outline of the top half of the silhouette to give me the size and the shape that I needed for a top, and then I cut that out. I did a test run first just to see if the top would fit before I cut the actual paper that I was going to use. I used a white Bristol board that has a sheen to it. I was really excited when I saw this at the dollar store for 2 sheets for $1. Of course, you can use whatever colors and paper or fabric or whatever you choose to use for this. I then glued the top onto the silhouette and added a few embellishments like some details at the cuffs and this gold sticker, which I found where. Yep, you guessed it, at the dollar store. I tried several different outfits before I came up with one I liked, so go ahead and style your silhouettes however you want to. I won't go over step-by-step detail of how I did the male clothing. It was the same process of tracing a pattern as shown in figure 1, cutting it out as in figure 2. Figure 3 shows a template I used to see if the size was right before cutting the material that I would actually use in the end. That material ended up being the cover of an old journal. I like it because it has texture that reminds me of a pin-striped suit. So take a look at what's around you and see if there's anything that you can repurpose. I cut the tie, the shirt and lapels separately, and then I glued them back on again. It's really about adding texture to make it look more realistic. For the tie, I used some of the gift bag that I used on the skirt. This is just a quick look at the pants. Again, it's the same process as before. Next, I'll show you how I made the koozies. Of course, you will use a beverage of your choice. I chose to use sparkling grape juice. After doing some research, I found that the best material to use for this is neoprene. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. This happens to be the same material used to make wetsuits. But since I'm going for cheap and accessible, I used foam sheets from Michaels. I believe they were around $1.50 each. I've seen other people use fabrics like flannel or burlap. I also used some Velcro. The following video will show you what to do. So here we have the final products. I ended up hot gluing on the Velcro because one side kept coming apart. Also, the black foam got dirty very quickly and every fingerprint showed. So I covered over the koozie with shiny Bristol board and then I glued on my silhouettes. I cut the flowers from an old tissue box, gave her a paper purse and him some flowers wrapped in paper. So go ahead, have some fun dressing up your koozies.